Hey guys, welcome back. We are getting started again on the Ram 2500 build. Today we're doing something exciting and getting this thing to breathe a little bit better, courtesy of our partners at S&B Filters. We are going to install a cold air intake on our 2019 2500 6.7 Cummins. This will work with all vehicles 19 and newer on the Cummins model. First step we have to do is you do have to take off your negative terminal. The instructions say this because the newer cars will hold memory for a little bit longer, and you want to make sure that you have no power going if you're going to be removing any electrical connectors, which we are, the sensors that are in the stock intake. So what you want to do is you want to loosen your negative terminal and you want to remove it, and then you want to let it sit for at least an hour, it says. So go ahead and remove this as your first step so you don't have to worry about it. If you can put it out of the way like I'm doing, go ahead. If not, go ahead and put a rubber glove or anything else that will stop it from coming back and touching and reconnecting. That's what I would suggest. And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay guys, so the next step is on these 2500s, you have dual batteries. So you're gonna wanna kind of come over here to the passenger side and do the same thing you did to the driver's side. Obviously using a 10 millimeter. I'm using obviously a ratchet box end wrench, but anything that you have that's 10 millimeter and get in there, you're gonna wanna do the same thing. Loosen it up and make sure that the connection is not staying. These newer cars are a little tighter. Just gotta make sure that this thing is loosened enough. You can get it off. Don't pry too hard because you don't wanna break anything. And just wiggle a little bit. Usually we'll get it going. There it goes. All right, and then the same thing as the other side. Just make sure that nothing is touching. We don't want it to start up again. Now we wait for the full hour to make sure that the juice is gone before we start disconnecting any of the other electrical components, and then we can get started in the install. Okay, so now that we have both batteries disconnected on the driver and passenger side of the vehicle, what you want to do first before starting any install is to make sure to open up your package, make sure all the parts that you're going to need are in there before you get started, because you don't want to get halfway through and then realize you don't have something and put everything back or have to wait and disable your vehicle. So go ahead and do that now. What you want to do is go ahead and open up the box. Make sure that you go through it. There's going to be some decent amount of packing material, so S&B does a great job when it comes to that. And you just want to go through and check to make sure you have everything in here. The great thing about S&B is they do provide you a QR code with the instructions, because the instructions do change obviously with any kind of updates with the vehicle. So instead of putting out old material, this QR code will always bring you to the most updated version of the install, and that way you have everything that you need, and it'll tell you piece by piece on what comes with the product, so you know that you have everything included. That way you know you have everything, and now that we're confident in all the parts that we have, we can get started on taking out the stock intake. As you can see, this is a stock intake that we will be removing. Be sure to disconnect all connectors and clamps so that it makes it easier to pull this large item out of the engine bay. All right guys, so now that we're gonna get started, the first thing to do is we need to take off this cowl cover and the bolts holding on this kind of intake ram air tube thing. So what you want to do is grab your trim removal tool or two flat blade screwdrivers, whatever's going to make it easier for you. What you want to do is easily kind of separate the top of the plastic push pin from the bottom. So you just want to give it a little bit of gap and then go ahead and pull out the entire thing. It's easier that way. You're not going to miss any of the pieces and you're not going to lose it because they are completely separable. So you don't want to pull it off and then miss one of these. You are going to need these to reinstall. There are a total of 14, so just take your time. little rubber that goes inside the fender that kind of holds it in. So just kind of pull it in a little bit and it should super easily just pop off. And then put this aside and make sure no one steps on it because this is a very expensive piece. Next, what I'm doing, obviously, I'm grabbing my electric tool here. This is the 10mm socket with the chuck on it. And basically what we're gonna do now is remove. There are 2 bolts on the corner of this little air intake, which you're gonna take them out. Super easy. So there's one, and then there's one more right here. And again, these just hold in this kind of ram air portion that shoves the air into your air box. So go ahead and verify it is nice and loose. All right, and then don't take it out yet because we have some wires that are attached to it that you'll use also your trim piece removal tool or a flat blade as well. Next, what we're gonna do is disconnect the sensors that are on the stock intake. That way we don't pull or pinch any wires. And then we'll get into removing the box and loosening the clamp from the turbo, and we'll pull this thing out as a whole unit. So what you want to do is look, we'll move the camera over here so you can see what we're going to do next. All right guys, so the next step to get this install done is to remove the sensors and the wiring from all the plastic retainers. So what you want to do first is you're going to use your trim tool or a flat blade. You're going to come in here and pop this off of this intake tube. Make sure the wires are nice and loose. Then you're going to look, there should be another one down here. So you're going to do the same thing. Again, just wiggle, wiggle, pull and wiggle. Should come right out. Or you just break it like I did. And there it goes. Luckily, this is just a 2-piece clip, so you'll just reconnect it once you're done. This slides right back in, and then this part will snap right back in to the holder down here. Okay, next step is to remove the clips. Now these are a little bit more difficult. Some of these are just push clips, so you just want to press them in. So you just want to check them, make sure what moves. Sometimes they kind of clip with it. So you just want to make sure that you're depressing and wiggling at the same time. Usually I use a little tiny flat blade to kind of get in here and kind of separate it. That makes it a little easier. There it goes. So what you'll want to do is there's a little tab on the inside, so you'll just go in there, you'll raise that up, and as you raise it up, you'll wiggle it off and pull it down. So I've taken off this first sensor. Now what we want to do is take our flat blade screwdriver. You're going to come in right at the top of this gray little tab, and you're going to come back with it. As you come back with it, you'll see it slides and it stops. Once it stops, go ahead and don't force it. Grab a part of it and just wiggle back. Once you start wiggling back, your sensor comes off, and now we are free and clear. So now all the wires are off. We tuck them away, make sure they don't get damaged. We'll just put them aside. Our next goal is to now remove the hose clamp. They say the easiest way is to just do the turbo one and take this out as an entire unit. So we're going to try that first to make sure it is true. So what you want to do is grab, what I'm using is going to be obviously my electric wrench. So I'm going to go ahead and get my power tool here with my extension. Go ahead and set it in there. And then what we're going to be using is the 5/16. Now down deep, it's kind of hard to see at this angle, but there is a hose clamp, and luckily the factory does do it with it facing up. So if you can, you're just going to try to get on top of that thing and loosen it up as much as possible. You'll see it move. Once it's done, it'll unsnap. You should be then able to wiggle and break loose this tube. Once that tube is loose, what you're supposed to do now is just wiggle the entire air box and try to break loose the rubber grommets. All right, there it is. making sure not to mess with your batteries. And now this whole piece should come out as one unit. See, we now have the stock intake out of the vehicle, and we have all the parts from S&B provided. I did get a different device so I can record and show you what's going on here. And go to the stock and remove both sensors from the stock too. So we'll go ahead and take this one out. And again, I'm using hand tools with this, so I don't want to strip anything out. I don't want to cause any damage. This is where things get a little bit more sensitive, so hand tools are usually preferred. So there's your first sensor. Go ahead and set the hardware aside. Okay, guys. All right, so now what we're doing is we're grabbing obviously the tube supplied by S&B Filters. We're going to take our sensor. What we've done now is we're going to go ahead and put on this kind of adapter they send with it. It's like a hard plastic adapter, which you're going to go ahead and slide on. It has little grooves on it, which fit right to the sensor. And then next you're going to use this kind of like gasket material to put on the tube itself. You're going to go ahead and slide it in, and then go ahead and use the supplied hardware that came with it originally to secure it to the actual tube. So again, we're just going to go ahead and slide these in here. It's not going to work. So what you're going to do is use the supplied hardware from S&B, which are these longer Phillips head screwdriver adapters. So you're going to go ahead and get those started. All right, so now that we have the first sensor started on the tube, what you want to do is, again, take the adapter. This one is meant for universal, so some of the trucks have a 2-prong, ours has a single prong. It does have an O-ring on it with this adapter. Now again, when you go to try to put it in, it's going to be a little stiff, so what you want to do is kind of twist and push at the same time, and then just make sure you're lining up the mounting hole to where it needs to be, okay? So once you have it in there nice and snug, again, you'll go ahead and take this kind of felt little gasket, put it on, and then now you will mate that to the tube, and then you will grab the supplied hardware, which are these 2 screws, and get those started as well. That way we are secure. So we'll go ahead and get this going. And obviously we'll secure it with our screwdriver. We just want to get these kind of started. That way they're secure, ready to go. And again, don't over tighten it. You just want to make sure that it's nice and snug. Kind of just making sure that the gasket material is sealing off any holes. That way nothing is leaking out of the tube. There you go. And again, that's why I'm using hand tools. Nothing electric with this type of stuff, just because these sensors are very sensitive and you don't want to break anything. All right, so now the tube has all the sensors. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and set this aside, and we'll move on to step number 10, I believe. Okay, so now that we have both sensors on the tube, what we need to do now is attach the couplers and get the tube installed into the box and the filter. So the first step is you want to make sure you orientate the tube with S&B facing upwards, and this will tell you that this is going to go inside the box, and then this side is the one that's going to be going to the turbo. So what you want to do is you want to find the supplied coupler, which is going to attach to the tube itself. And again, these are a little stiff, so you want to make sure to attach it. Make sure it's all the way back to the collar. That way you know you're going to have a nice secure setup. You're going to take one of the collars and attach this coupler to the tube. Now again, orientate it that in case you have to take it out of the vehicle, it's facing upwards. That way it's easy to reach. I'm gonna go ahead and take my power tool real quick. I'm not gonna super tighten it on there, but I'm just gonna get it tight enough That way it's not gonna move around on me, and we know that it's a little bit secure and it's nice and snug, right? So that one's done, so we're good. This is gonna be the other attachment that's gonna go to the turbo side. Obviously it's gonna go down here, but for right now, we're just gonna move it up here. That way it's secured, it's not gonna slide off on us, and we're good. Okay guys, so the next step is we're gonna attach a bracket to our main box. That bracket right here is gonna have a grommet in it, which is gonna go into one of the stock locations to make sure that this is secured when it's installed. You are gonna bolt from the inside out. So what you wanna do is take this bracket. The hole is gonna go towards the top of the box because that's where the grommet's gonna sit. And then you're gonna have supplied hardware, which is 2 of each, which is 1 bolt and 1 washer. So you wanna go ahead and get those started. Again, from the inside, you're gonna line up this bracket, whole side up. There's holes in the front. Go ahead and slide the bolt through. Washer first, then bolts. Go ahead and start the threads. Just get it secure so it's on there. And then what you wanna do now, grab your second set. Same thing. Go ahead and put your bolt through the washer, line it up with the bracket, and go ahead and get it started. Make sure you just take your time. Make sure nothing gets cross-threaded. We hate for that to happen, and then if you ever need to take it out, it's not secure. Okay, so now once you got it in there, you have a couple options. I'm gonna go ahead and use an extension on my electric tool, as well as a 7/16 or a 10 millimeter, whatever one works best for you. For some reason it said 10, but 7/16 seemed to be the right size for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this through to the bolts, and again, just get them nice and snug. So we'll start that one. That one's nice and snug. Get that one going, nice and snug. What you want to do is verify that it is installed, and then just give it a quick tap to make sure that it's in there good and it's not gonna, rattle loose or do anything while you're driving. All right, so we're all set with that. And now, I'm gonna move on to the next step. Let's see what they say. So the next thing we're gonna do is, it looks like we're going to mount the interior air box to the holes of the bracket, which we already did. So now what we're going to do is add this circular silicone insert to the box. Now I've been warned that these are very stiff and it takes a little bit of pushing. So let's see what it actually entails. When you're looking at it, you want to make sure that this curved part is in the inside of the box and that this rib is around this ridge. So what we want to do is just kind of see if we can get this thing started in here. And then we kind of just do like a circular motion, start on one side and just try to wedge it in. If it gets tight, you could always use like a flat blade screwdriver, but it wasn't as horrible as I was expecting. Actually went on pretty simply, and it looks like we are sealed. You just want to make sure you look on the inside, make sure that it's flush, nothing's pinched, and it looks like it's in there pretty securely. And there we go, it's in. The next step is to take your main box, okay, make sure everything is still seated, and insert the tube into the box. Now, there's a couple different ways to do it. I prefer to take the filter first. That way you can orientate the filter on where you need it to be and then put it in. So what you want to do is make sure, again, that this coupler is accessible to you to tighten it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there. That's going to work for me. And we're going to take the tube and we're going to line it up with the filter. Now, the best thing to do is to make sure that this this little band clamp is loose, because you're going to need to wiggle it around a little bit to fit it in. So you're going to push this tube kind of as much as you can into the box, and then from the back side, what you want to do is kind of wedge it into the filter and then rotate it forward, and it should pop right in to the coupler. There we go, nice and sealed. You can kind of look around. Luckily the box is very see-through, kind of see it in there. And then now that you have everything kind of secured, you're going to want to grab this clamp Make sure to try to make it as even around it as possible. There is a decent lip on this tube, but again, you don't want any kind of leakage when it comes to this. You want to make sure you have a good seal. So what I did was I put my hand through the back side. I'm going to rotate this clamp so that I can then reach it with my power tool. And again, I'm not going to over tighten it. I'm just going to get it started so it doesn't rotate on me or fall down out of the way. And just lightly, there we go. Get it started. Because this is going to probably have to rotate once we're in here and on the tube, because we got to make sure that it's orientated and that this top is going to go on. So if you look at it, it's going to have to go down a little bit the way that I have it. So it may or may not work. We might have to loosen it once it's in there, but at least we know it's attached. It's in a good sealing point, and we know it's not going to go anywhere. That's the main concern. So we're just going to rotate around, make sure everything looks good. All right. So now that that's done, the next step is to add the extension to secure the stock ram air part to our box, which is going to be this device right here. What you want to do is kind of look at it. It's going to give you kind of the shape of the hole, right? So if you look at it, it kind of lets you know what it's supposed to look like. There it is. I think that's it right there. And the ridge right here is going to go toward the box because there's a little like area where it's going to seal itself into. So what you want to do is kind of get it going, look at the shape of it. Hopefully I'm doing it right here. And then again, it is a little stiff, so you just need to kind of work it around, pull and tug. There it goes. It slides right on. All right, and then we'll get to attaching the ram air part to the box. Now you have an option. There is a plug that it comes with that goes on this side. Now, some people choose not to put the plug because they want full cold air to come in from both sides. I'm gonna err on the side of caution because we do like to use our vehicle off-road. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert this plug on the side of the box. That's gonna stop debris from coming in, throwing up from your tires, water, anything you want to do to make sure you don't hydrolock. Now again, that is a choice that you can make depending if you live like in a dry climate like Arizona or some other state, but for me, I am going to go ahead and use the plug, but this is an optional piece that you do not have to install. It's pretty simple. It just again keeps debris out of the box. So that part is done. The next thing we want to do is install the grommet into the bracket that we attach. So here's the front bracket that we attached to the box, which is going to go on to one of our stocks. So what you want to do is you want to take this grommet and you just want to wedge it through. Now this will be fun as well because it's very stiff, but you just want to kind of just pinch it and push it through. And once you get it started, it usually should follow suit pretty easily. If not, again, you can use a little screwdriver, but just push it in and twist, and it should pop right on. All right, now that we have that grommet on, we're gonna go ahead and remove now the air box from the ram air. But before we do that, I just wanted to kind of show a difference between the two. I'll get out of the way. We're gonna take a picture here. Okay, so once again, we have the partially assembled S&B filter box. We do have the stock box. What we do now need to do is remove this from the stock box. And there's a couple different ways to do it, but the easiest way is just to get a flat blade screwdriver. Smaller the better. And you want to wedge it in between these little tabs. You should just have to give it a little wiggle once you get it going. There it is. And it pops right off. So now we've disassembled it from this giant useless box. And then when we go to install it in the truck, it's going to mate up now to the grommet that we have there. All right, so the next step will be to attach it to the box. And the gonna do that, you're gonna go ahead and get the box, and you're gonna wedge this inside the rubber, and that's how it's gonna seal. So it's not gonna clip on like the other one. It's using this like kind of rubber adapter to kind of wedge it on. And to be honest, it's on there pretty good. I'm surprised. Without any kind of real attachment, it's just using the friction from the O-ring. So the other piece is going to be the grommets that are going to be installed. Make sure you pre-install these to the bottom of the box. That's what's going to go into the stock locations. When you put it and push it down, it's going to secure it into the vehicle so it doesn't wiggle around on you. So now what we're going to do is get ready and put this thing back in the truck and finish up buttoning up all the little loose ends, like the mounting for the sensors and all the plastic trim pieces. So let's get to it. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and pick up this box. We're going to install it now to the vehicle, so follow me over here. As you can tell, we have this big open spot where the stock one used to sit. What I recommend is when you're installing it, go ahead and do the tube to the turbo first, then push onto the grommets, because that way you have a little bit more wiggle room. If you do the grommet first, putting the tube on is going to be a little bit more difficult. So you kind of want to wedge this in. So you want to come off the back side. You want to make sure that the back coupler gets onto the turbo. You can't see. So as you can see, there's the turbo down there. We're just gonna go ahead and make sure that this tube wedges on with that coupler. Again, if you have a step stool, it's probably the best way to do it. It's just a little bit difficult to get the angle, but you just want to wedge that sucker on there as best you can. There we go. Wiggle it as much. All right. Use your hand. Make sure nothing got pinched on the backside, but it looks like it's on there. We're pretty good. So now you want to come back to the front of the filter and this whole box. Again, making sure we're lining up all the grommets to the stock locations. You can do that by this front grommet up here is going to kind of help you get you where you need to be. So that grommet is your first grommet in there. And then you can look inside the box to make sure that the bottom ones are also lining up. Okay, so you want to line up the grommets and kind of just push it down. It should then kind of seat itself and you'll feel it kind of snap in, and then you should be good to go. All right, so now we're down, we're in the tube. We want to make sure, again, the turbo is seated. We want to make sure that all the grommets are in. If you can, reach in and make sure everything feels like it's on. So it does. All right, and we're good. All right, so now that we have everything in, the grommets are tight, you want to make sure that everything is lined up properly. Now is the time to do the turbo clamp on the back. Again, I'm using my electric with the extension and the 5/16 socket. What you want to do, and what I notice it works, is you want to push on this filter, which will help you get the tube back onto the turbo. Once it's there, go ahead and get the clamp positioned so that it's obviously within the middle of the coupler and on the turbo. Once you have that going, you're then going to go ahead and take your tool with the extension and start tightening your clamp. Now we're on there. We're going to hold the coupler down and use our socket here. Just take your time. Again, this is not where you want to have any leaks. And tighten down the coupler. What I like to do is tighten it a little bit, then take it and wiggle it a little bit more just to make sure that we are on. That's going to hold it in position now, so you don't have to use both your hands to kind of steady it. And now you can kind of get down there. Now again, don't tighten it too hard. So now that you're on, give it a little wiggle, make sure it's tight. Now what you want to go back and do is tighten down the other clamp that we started originally on the tube itself to the intake. And this is why I like this flexible extension. So now we're good. And now we're gonna do the same thing on the filter. So take down the filter. Make sure that's secured. And while we're in here, before we forget, we're gonna go ahead and get our Phillips and make sure that our sensors are also nice and snug, making sure no air gaps are gonna be coming out of them. Okay. Pulling them. Now, what we wanna do is go ahead and get our sensors back on this side, and we're gonna plug them in. So we're gonna go ahead and plug in this flat sensor on the bottom first. So that sensor is good to go. And now we're gonna do the top sensor as well. Make sure you have it orientated properly. Okay guys, so now that we're nice and secured, we wanna check the connectors. Come on in. What we wanna look at is on this elbow, when you install it, it's gonna wanna face the opposite way. The instructions from S&B will show you how to pop open this collar and flip it this orientation. That way you're not pushing the wire against the box. That's a big, major key component. So just make sure you're doing that. The next thing we're gonna do now is gonna re-add the ram air from the stock box that brings in the cold air in here. And then we're gonna go ahead and seal the box off with the clear plexi and the grommet that goes around it. So first thing you wanna do, obviously you're gonna grab your stock inlet tube. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna wedge it on. So you kind of just wanna like angle it in here, and you're gonna use this rubber grommet is what's gonna like kind of keep it pressured onto the tube and line it up in the stock location. You're gonna take your 10mm bolts, kind of apply some pressure, lift this thing up a little bit to line up the hole, and go ahead and get this bolt started. Again, don't tighten it down, just get it started so it's secure and you know it's in the right spot. Now you're gonna move on to the driver's side. Same thing, kind of line it up, get the bolt started. That way you're not cross-threading anything. Feels good. All right, so now that's in. Go ahead and grab whatever tool you're gonna use, socket, wrench. Again, I'm gonna use a power tool. Make sure it's on tighten. We're gonna go ahead and zip this side down. Again, not super tight. Making sure that everything lines up again. Then we're gonna go ahead and zip this one down. This one will tighten it in, make sure we're good. All right, analyze that one. So now we know that our air is gonna come in, give us a good service. Filter's nice and tight. Now we go on to what I've heard is the most difficult part of this whole entire thing, and that's gonna be your plexiglass cover, as well as your grommet's gonna seat it in. What you need to do now is take this cutout corner that you see and this tab, and that's what you're gonna line up first. They say that's the easiest way to do it, so I'm gonna go with the experts and push that in there. And then again, just work your way around as best you can, seating it in to the little channel that's provided. A little more patience probably is needed with this. And obviously the closer you get to the end, the tighter it's gonna get. A couple different tricks I've heard you can use to get this done. One is just manhandle it and try to get it on. The others is using your trim panel tool or a small flat blade screwdriver. That will also work if you're getting issues. But just kind of curl it over the top, and it should kind of go in as long as you follow it through. Obviously you can clean this off, but for installation purposes, we're just gonna get this done. Now they say to start in one corner, making sure to get this channel into this ridge to seal it. So either one side or one channel. I like to do the whole side because then I know that it's seated in there properly. And then you just wanna snap it in. That's the good thing about it. It's like a shallow channel. So you just kind of give it a little push down and in, and it should seat perfectly in. The way you can check it, you can kind of slide it around and it'll stay in there. And that's basically it. So now you have the full install. Big air box out of the way. Again, you want to check all your connections, electrical as well. Make sure there's no air gaps. Go ahead and get it going. And once you start it up, check for any check engine lights. With the Ram, just a heads up, when you unplug both batteries, that is going to throw a couple sensor lights on you, your traction stabilizer control and your ABS. Do not freak out about that. What you want to do is go ahead and start the truck up, let it run for a few minutes by itself. What it's doing, it's going to kind of initialize all those settings, and then those lights should go away on their own. So don't freak out. That is something that we got some feedback on this box, but otherwise this is it. Now what we want to do is go ahead and put our trim panel back on. So that's this piece that we took off initially at the very beginning. Again, this has the 14 snap-in connectors.